Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. Now, we got a great questions the other day from a guy named Chris Jaime, and I appreciate that, Chris. Shout out to Chris. And he basically, asked a very thought-provoking question. And, he stated that I can't think of anybody that I would favor over Canelo Alvarez. Who would you favor, or would you favor anybody over Canelo from 168 pounds and under? So if we break that down from 168 pounds and under, is there anyone that we can favor over Canelo Alvarez? And if we look at everyone, I just don't see any particular name to favor over Canelo Alvarez, but I see a few 50-50 fights and a potential upset fight. And so I'll just break that down. Now, even in a 50-50 fight with Canelo Alvarez, he's always going to have a slight edge, just for the simple fact that he has the experience, the resume, the skill sets, and the abilities, as well as the chin. But there's guys in the divisions from 168 to 160 that actually have physical attributes that could trouble Canelo Alvarez. So if you look at a Callum Smith, he has the height and reach advantage. He does have power. I believe he's an elite level fighter at 168. So I think that Callum Smith could cause Canelo Alvarez a lot of problems. If Canelo Alvarez gets on the inside, works his body, he could get him out of there. But that's going to be a tall task against a guy with so much height and reach advantage on you. I think it won't be as easy as people think it will be, but I think Canelo can possibly win that fight. But I think that Callum Smith poses one of the top threats to Canelo Alvarez at 168 pounds if Canelo were to still fight at 168 or be open to that idea at some point. And not only does Callum Smith has a height and reach advantage over Canelo, I mean, the guy stands at 6'3". This guy will hover over Canelo, and unlike Rocky Fielding, Callum Smith not only has the height and reach, but he knows how to use it. He's in his prime. He's 28 years old. I believe he's an elite level fighter. He's coming off a knockout win against George Groves. Callum Smith is not a guy to take lightly or easy, or that will be an easy fight. I honestly, truly believe that's a 50-50 fight, in my humble opinion. Let's move on to the next fighter I believe has a good chance at Canelo Alvarez. And that's another 50-50 fight, and that's against Danny Jacobs. A lot of guys are writing off Danny Jacobs, and, we have to look at the facts about Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs is 32 years old. He's still somewhat in his prime. He's 5'11.5" with a 73-inch reach, so he's going to come in with the height and reach advantage. Some will say that he's even more of a skill boxer than a Callum Smith, and he's going to come in heavier and stronger than a Callum Smith. So you have to understand that Danny Jacobs is going to be a problem for Canelo. And not only can Danny Jacobs box from the outside, but he can also box in the inside. I think a lot of people are overlooking Danny Jacobs' skill set and how great a fighter he really is. But even with that being said, the fact that Canelo Alvarez is such a top-level fighter, he's already, videos already surfaced Canelo looking sharp and fast for this fight with Danny Jacobs. For anyone to beat Canelo, especially Danny Jacobs on fight night, Danny Jacobs is going to have one of the best performances of his career. He knows this is the biggest fight of his career. And, Canelo's training and always rises to the occasion on the biggest stages, because you have to understand, a lot of fanboys to come out and tell you, oh, Canelo, did knock out this guy, or did knock out that guy. But, at the end of the day, when you look at Canelo Alvarez, this is not the same Canelo Alvarez of the past. If you have not noticed that Canelo Alvarez has been consistently improving, and that's why we don't listen to fanboys, because these guys are just worried about what people think. Oh, he didn't knock out Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. A lot of people don't realize that Chavez Jr. came into that fight, very heavy, already a naturally bigger man than Canelo. But even then, Canelo has improved since that fight. He is not the same fighter. So you have to understand that even though he's not the same fighter, I think Canelo's body attack this time around has improved so much so that he could get him out of there. It's just that you have to understand that when a fighter enters their prime, when a fighter has leaps and bounds of growth, you see different things from them. And that's what Canelo has. They say, oh, he did knock out Miguel Cotto. That was in 2015. The Canelo of 2015 and the Canelo of 2019 is completely two different fighters. So you have to understand that there's a fighter like Canelo that continuously raises his game, and then there's fighters that stay stagnant, that brings the same thing to every fight. And with Canelo, you never know what new tool he has in his bag. You never know what he's going to bring to the game. So those are the two fighters that I think have the best chance to compete with Canelo at a 50-50 level, that has the best shot to possibly dethrone Canelo. But even in both of those fights, I still favor Canelo Alvarez. Now, the last fighter I believe is the wild card at 160 pounds. and that's Demetrius Andrade. And let's just break down Demetrius Andrade. I believe Demetrius Andrade has an elite level skill set. We don't know if he's yet an elite level fighter. He is the world champion at 160, and he needs a fight, especially against a Billy Joe Saunders, which is very much talked about, to see if he really is the real deal. He seems to be a similar version of Landy Lara, except for he has actual power. The guy has a lot of size and a lot of power, and with that type of boxing skill set, he's going to be a problem for literally anybody he fights in the division. Now, the reason why he's my wild card is because he has just not yet proven it. And, as soon as he steps up in competition, as soon as he gets the fight done, and if he can come out victorious and look impressive doing it, then at that point, we can put Demetrius Andrade up there on the level to be able to compete with Canelo. But even at that point, the fact that Canelo has experience, at being at this level for such a long time, fighting only the biggest fights, you'd still favor Canelo. But honestly, these are all difficult fights for Canelo. So I feel like, just because people look at Danny Jacobs and say, well, Canelo should beat him, that they're going to give Canelo not enough credit if he is to beat Danny Jacobs. If he does beat Danny Jacobs, he's not going to get the credit he deserves, because people are just thinking it's an automatic, it's going to be easy. He's a very good opponent, very skilled. It's a difficult fight. So if Canelo looks good beating Danny Jacobs, he's stepping his game up to another level. If he doesn't look as great and he ekes out a win, you still can't take anything from him, because you have to understand that Danny Jacobs has physical attributes. He's an elite level opponent, and there's not an opponent that has ever fought Danny Jacobs that Danny Jacobs didn't make look bad. When you look at a Dimitri P-Rock fight, because I'm sure there's some fanboy somewhere that'll mention that fight, and when you look at that fight, you can't take that fight seriously based on where Danny Jacobs was at the point in his life with cancer and losing his grandmother right before the fight. So you have to use that as an anomaly, as an exception, and not the rule. Once again, unbiased as always, it's the Ibfp. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.